Inside Improv with Stacey Halal, Joe Bill, Elise Rodriguez, and special guests Balashee, Viswanathan.
But welcome to Inside Improv. It is already July, it's July 23rd. Summer is going by fast, but we're so excited about our guest today, all the way from India. I will introduce her in a moment, but first, let me bring on Mr. Joe Bill. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Stacey. How are you?
I'm good. Guess what we have tonight? Our first show. Curious. It's a live
Curious?
show. Yep.
I love it. What is it?
It's not
really?
a curious. Yeah, it's not a curious show. We're doing. We have been partnering with Oregon Children's Theater, which is a fantastic organization, and they rent our space all the times that we don't use it. Pre-pandemic, we had just started doing that, and this is going to be such a cute show because they have kids who start at like 3 and continue at the organization till they graduate from high school. So it's all the seniors who just graduated from high school doing an improv show tonight. It's called Impulse. So
for kids?
It's teens and everything. We did a rehearsal last night and it was all about graduating from high school and COVID. So that's what's on everybody's minds for sure.
It's so topical. It's so interesting that the fires in Oregon are not on the people's minds in Portland because you're polluting the rest of the country.
Yeah.
So we can take on the fires. Oh, you had no idea there was even fires, did you?
I knew that there were fires. John didn't know that there were fires. I was aware that there were fires, but this is the first summer that we haven't really been getting, choking in the smoke in a long time. It didn't used to be this way. It didn't used to be like, summertime is smoke time.
I wonder what's different in the world that all of a sudden has these weird weather events happening and fires and
probably nothing real,
It's probably just the astrology of Earth. If we could check with Elise on when the Earth's birthday is, I'll bet she can figure it out.
Well, speaking of Elise and astrology, let's bring her on, another co-host at Inside Improv, Elise Rodriguez. Elise is, hey, you're there.
I'm here.
Elise's tech has been a little on and off already today. She looks a little frozen right now. So we're going to have to see how it goes. But you know what I love? Just like when John Gabritaggios was here, Elise looks gorgeous no matter what frame she's frozen in. So it's like her photo spread in Vogue magazine. So I think we should go ahead and bring on our fantastic guest. I'm so excited, all the way from Bangalore, India, Bala. I'm going to try to say it properly. Bala Viswanathan. Was that close?
Viswanathan.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And that was a fantastic intro, just by the way. My jaw dropped. I was gagging at how beautiful that intro was. Thanks. That was so good.
You guys start out strong, even though we're usually a little smoother in the transitions in and out. But, we've got, if Elise were here, she'd tell us what's happening astrologically to affect our technology today. But it's so great to have you. It's so great to meet you. I have heard all about you from Joe Bill. And for those who don't know, Bala is a part of Improv Comedy Bangalore and also the Adamant Eves, which we will talk about for sure, and Not Therapy, which is a show she does with Joe Bill. So why don't we start talking actually about Not Therapy, since you're both here with me. Let's talk about that. tell me about your show.
Not therapy was just a fun experiment that Joe and I don't remember how we started talking about it. Joe, do you remember how we started talking about it? We were just talking and we're like, this should be a show. And we just made it a show.
I think it was, I think it's the hook is on the surface, we both look so different, but we're both improvisers. We're both in therapy. We both don't like improv to be treated like therapy because it's not therapy. And then it's one of those things where Bala and I, once we started talking, it's a little bit like talking with you and Elise, Stacy, where like that with the two of you, I've covered some really deep stuff that I usually don't talk about. And Bala and I got there kind of quickly. And then we just thought, wasn't the first thing we talked about was imposter syndrome? Maybe.
Yeah, imposter syndrome was our first episode. Yeah. The premise was basically, can someone who looks like Joe and I, who've had such different life experiences, find things in common that has to do with life and improv and therapy. And it's been a great, successful experiment so far.
Awesome. Where can people find it if they want to? Is it both video and audio, or is it just audio?
Mm-hmm. It's both video and audio because we're both gorgeous. We have a Not Therapy Facebook page where we post our videos semi-erratically, depending on if I finish editing videos on time. But yeah, we've gotten how many episodes so far? 5 or 6?
I think we've published 4 or 5, and we've recorded probably 10 or 12, something like that.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
but it really kind of, we just started doing it, and I think Elise and John were kind of like this too, right? You start doing a thing, and you're going to put something out there, and so you take a few weeks to find out what your voice in this medium is. And so we just kind of
we just did an episode, and then we just did totally in front of everybody.
Well, you guys go gorgeous next level. So there's a lot of gorgeous. I think that's the lesson. Be gorgeous and improvise. I'm out. See ya.
So speaking,
sorry,
go ahead,
and
Elise.
started going. Definitely. We're like, let's see where it goes, and learned to edit as. Wow, this is now. It's great.
What I love about what just happened is I think I actually understood it in just those tiny clips that they just went ahead and did it, learned how to edit on the fly, and wow, it worked all out, I think, or at least that's my takeaway from it. So Bala, speaking of life experience, now did you grow up in Bangalore?
I grew up in Mumbai and Bangalore. My father has a job that made us move around quite a bit. So 10 years in Bombay, and the rest of the time here, and then 3 years in North Carolina when I went there for grad school in 2014.
And what were you studying in grad school?
I want to ask you to guess, because this always gets people.
Biochemistry.
It's a hard science. It's one of the hard sciences. Another guess, not biochemistry, but yeah, one of the pure sciences.
Physics.
Close enough. Mechanical engineering.
Amazing. And are you practicing mechanical engineering now?
Nope. Most recently, I was a venture capitalist, which I quit, and now I am fun employed for now.
Excellent. I mean, this is the show of people who have quit careers that some might think are more legitimate to pursue their passions in life. And I think that's
the only way to go. Yeah.
I agree 100%. I love that this separate show with Elise.
I know. I lost my train of thought.
Elise, you're half here.
Phone, but shit, hot ass mess.
I heard phone and hot mess. So I don't know. So Bala, a question so somebody like me who has never been to India but would love to go. How would you describe the difference between the cities of Bombay or Mumbai and Bangalore?
Oh, Mumbai is fast. It's always people have their heads down. They have places to get to. Nobody's taking scenic walks in the park. And Bangalore is the garden city of India with tons of parks, and people walk around with all the time in the world. Both cities have terrible traffic. Bangalore has better weather, and therefore people are a little more open to enjoying that weather and their lives. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Mumbai is hot. It's very hot and very fast. And therefore I like Bangalore so much better.
And Bangalore is also the tech capital in India. Is that still true?
In India's Silicon Valley is what it is. Yeah, and a lot of startups come out of here, which is why I was a venture capitalist for the past 3 years.
Amazing. Awesome. So let's talk about your experience with improv. You started while you were in college in North Carolina. Yep. With a college group.
Yes, it was a college group called the Comedic Improvisational Alliance, CIA, and we did shows in college, and we had practice every week, and that's where I learned most of what I know about improv.
Amazing. And then when you went back, were you part of founding Improv Comedy Bangalore? Was it already there?
So when I came back from the US back to Bangalore, I just went headfirst into the job, and I was just busy with that for a while. And one day I just wanted to Google Improv plus Bangalore on Google, and voila, Improv Comedy Bangalore popped up, and they'd been around since 2015. So I wrote them an email telling them that I wanted to join them for rehearsals. They were gracious enough to accept me, and the rest is history.
That's amazing. 2015 isn't that long ago, and we've had some special guests from India travel through, and they were talking about India being very new at that time as well, especially with women in improv being even more rare than improv in general. Yes. So it's kind of exciting, though, I think, to be part of the new discovery and exploration of the improv community. How has your experience been as part of Improv Comedy Bangalore?
It's been a ride. So in the beginning, with I guess with any improv school, and especially because we're in India and we aren't the center of improv, we try to mimic a lot of the Western theaters and the Western schools. So we just wanted to get our hands on anything that had, I don't know, any of the marquee improv schools on it, like Second City, Improv IO, Annoyance. We had a couple of our members go to the Chicago Improv Festival in 2017. And when they came back, they had a wealth of knowledge. And we were like, we have to follow all of this exactly as it is. And only if we follow all of the steps are we doing improv the quote unquote right way. And now, after that phase was done, and with the pandemic and speaking to so many people around the world, hi Elise, you're back.
Hi, I'm trying.
It sounds a little bit better, actually.
Much better.
All right.
And with the pandemic and with us interacting with people all over the world, I think now there is a little more of an intentional move towards finding our own style. like we found the basics. We know what the rest of the world has been doing as improv, and we're like, okay, we read all the cliff notes. Now what can we do? What do we bring to the table? So being able to go through that journey with a group of people who are more or less on the same path has been very, very creatively freeing.
That's awesome. I mean, India has such a rich and unique storytelling history in theater and film and its own style of music that's just so different and distinct. Are there ways that you're trying to rethink some of those specifically that you can share in your approach to improv there now?
Definitely. So even with our bringing our own unique Indian culture into improv, I for one, I can only speak for myself. I was still trying to cater to a global audience and trying to make it more palatable, trying to fit into these India molds that people are already familiar with. And very recently, I've just started wondering, what can I bring from, like you said, the traditional storytelling cultures that we have, and a very, very rich folk culture in India. What are the elements I can bring from that to make our storytelling in improv richer and bring in more elements and different facets that people hadn't seen before? I've as a result, I've delved back into my own culture, and I've been bringing back certain story threads and elements from that, and trying to build some workshops or some sort of show concepts around those. There is one example of this. A friend of mine and a co-improviser of mine, Lakshmi and I, we have a show called Shadows, which draws upon the Jungian shadow work theory of, these are all taboo topics, we can't talk about it. And coming from India, where the don't talk about these things taboo is enforced a lot more, we just decided to invite people to come and talk about things that they have been told were wrong, and use that as an inspiration for our improv shows. So that's one of the examples that I think makes sense in this context.
That's amazing. What are some of those topics that the show has delved into that otherwise wouldn't be talked about?
Criticism of the government is a big one. That's one. Women being able to assert their free choice emphatically, and that's another one. Talking about toxic masculinity within the family, it's taboo to criticize your parents, and especially so the male parent in Indian culture. So being able to get on screen and just voice that for other people has been a great experience.
It's amazing. Are you doing this show? You've been doing it virtually?
Yes, we started off virtually. We were actually in the process of conceptualizing it as an in-person show, and whatever happened. Pandemic happened, so we just decided to go.
Yeah, go ahead, Elise.
Yes.
Is it working? Can you hear me?
Yes, you look great.
Yes.
You sound much better.
Yay!
All right.
Do you
In a second, I'm going to move my ring light to the front of me so that this doesn't look like this. But anyway,
No, you look great.
I am very sad that I missed a good chunk of the beginning, because I feel like this has obviously gone very well so far. My question is, when you are talking about these things like having to do with toxic masculinity within the family. Oh my motherfuck! Is this frozen?
No, you look great.
Nope.
Oh, okay.
You're great.
Sorry. Okay. When you're talking about toxic masculinity within the family and how that's not something that's true, like really accepted in the culture, and you don't have to answer this because I'm just now realizing how intrusive of a question this is, but how does that feel personally for you? Like, is that something that you had to work on to be able to say out loud because of how you were also raised, or How does that reflect on you personally and your personal life?
So at the time of doing a bunch of these shows, I already had done a fair bit of processing. I have been in therapy since I think mid 2019. So it's I'm coming up on 2 years improv. I mean therapy anniversary. But I had already processed a lot of it. So when things that were really close to my lived experiences came up, it was a little matter of fact while the show was happening. But then after the show happened, I'd be like, oh shit. I did not realize that there was this, sort of knot of unprocessed emotion or unprocessed trauma inside me. And then I would take that to my therapist in tears and be like, I thought I was cool and I thought I could do a show about this, but look at me, I'm a mess.
Yeah, totally.
So
I tell everybody that, like, when I was doing the podcast, it's terrifying. Like from the beginning, it's been terrifying. It gets less scary over time, but it's scary because we're not used to putting our head above the water and actually saying something. At least not in our gut, like in a safe space, in a way that we know is always going to be safe.
Yeah, I think the one thing that also helped me navigate this is I knew that none of my male relatives would ever see this because they don't know that I do improv. They don't know what improv is. They're just like, oh, she does like street plays. That's what Bala does. So I'm like, cool. You'll never know all the shit I've been talking about you on this show.
Oh my goodness. If they should come across it at some point, what would that mean for you?
So now speaking about it, I did wrestle with the fear, like, oh my God, I'm going to get ostracized from the family. If there's a wedding that I have to attend, I'm probably going to be talked about a lot more than I already am. Considering I'm 29, unmarried. I think I'm the oldest unmarried woman in my family at this point right now. Wow. Shit. But
new topic for next therapy. That's realization right now.
Do I hold that with pride or with horror? Find out in my next therapy session.
Yes.
But
probably depends on your mood and whether you're... Yeah.
Exactly. So no, how I feel about them listening to it now, very indifferent. I don't care at all, and it's real right now. Saying that is super liberating. I'm having a lot of fun saying that. Yeah, I don't give a shit.
That's awesome. My dad was first generation American from Syria, and very wonderful dad and a great man, but carried with him a lot of the traditional ideas of what life is about. And it's about getting married and having kids. And that's just not the way that my life was unraveling. And it was interesting to watch him struggle with it in a lot of ways. He would say things that were very beyond invalidating. Like there was a definite communication of worth. Yeah. I'm in the vicinity of what you're trying to articulate because I've been there. I sense it. I feel it. I see the energy. But and like I lived in Oregon for 10 years and they never came to visit because they would want to spend their time visiting the kids with kids, right? And things like just a lot of ways that it was communicated but at the same time he was open to recognizing it if he was called out on it. And we had this big fight, and we didn't fight often, and this is really the only one as an adult. We fought a ton when I was a teenager, but once I left the house, like, we didn't really have fights. But there was this time where the family was all gathering and getting together, and I was dating somebody, and I wanted him to come with me. And my dad was like, I don't want the kids to see your succession of boyfriends, or however he put it. And this person I ended up being with for 7 years. And I just lost my shit on him and was very like, told him how he made, and he sent me flowers and a handwritten note, which for my dad is like a very big deal, apologizing. And so I think it's an interesting dilemma. It's almost like Fiddler on the Roof as I'm talking about it. I'm thinking about like a dad whose family is their priority, right? Well, also should come to terms with loving a child who isn't conforming to their idea of what should be, right?
Yeah.
Have a geek out moment. Eric Fromm, who was a philosopher, wrote the book The Art of Loving. And in The Art of Loving, he talks about how women love their children and how men love their children. And of course, this is assuming that this is somebody who was assigned this gender, a male or female at birth and identifies as man or woman. But he said that men love their children for how much their children reflect who they are and how much their children are like them. So with the father side, he theorized that naturally the father's love is conditional and the mother's love is unconditional, but that's also why the mother's love can be really toxic, because no matter what, she's going to love you, but it could go both ways. So that's interesting that you're saying that, because it's all about, you're not doing what my idea of what should be done is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's exactly how.
He just dropped the mic and walked away, pretty much. Bye, Elise. Well, speaking of women and their roles in society, you are a part of the Adamant Eves, which is all-female identifying group in Bangalore. Why don't you tell us a little bit how that group came to be?
Yeah, in 2017, I had been with Improv Comedy Bangalore for a couple of months, and we realized we had 6 female identifying performers, which was a first, because we had everywhere we looked, right? Most of the troops were dominated by men. We had 6 men and 6 women who were regular, fixtures in most of our shows, and we thought we should just experiment. We thought, how would it be to have 6 women on stage? What would our scenes look like? What would the audience think? And what started as this really, no strings attached experiment just snowballed into this entire ensemble on its own, because we realized we had so much fun just improvising with women on stage.
I feel you. Yeah. So I'll wait until you answer this question, and I'll share some of my observations. But what were the things that you noticed that were different when you were playing with just other women and women identifying folks on stage?
It's interesting that Elise brought up the whole fathers, men, the male parent being conditional, the female parent being unconditional, because what I saw in our dynamic was we were a lot more accepting of each other's choices and what we did on stage. And there really was this sisterhood. I know pop culture likes to knock sisterhoods and like covens and groups of women as, we just indulge in, flippant woo-woo nonsense and feelings all the time. But that's what helped us improvise really well. Y'all should try it, man.
Also, if that's what we want to do, then that's the fuck what we're gonna do.
Exactly.
I really felt like, and it was intuitive at first, right? Like that I wanted to play with women, and as you were describing, right? It was just like, oh, what would that feel like? And then doing it felt so good, and it was hard to articulate. And now, looking back, I recognize not only what was beneficial about it, but what was detrimental to being the only woman in an all male group, to my confidence, because what I have found playing with all women is like almost nothing goes unseen, right? You just are more visible. And I think women are more sensitive to nonverbal cues and moves as well. And women tend to make more, depending, right? Obviously, these are generalizations, but depending on who they are, where they are, more nonverbal cues. And so can get missed more often.
Our whole life to pay attention to everybody else and to take care of everybody else. So if we're all doing that in one space for each other, then shit, what's the point of the other guys?
Right.
Yeah. And just adding on to that point, men wanting to be right all the time is, oh no. Am I frozen?
Nope, we can hear you. You sound good.
Okay.
It's probably me. At any point you're wondering, it's going to be me. Frozen.
And the thing that I recognized was like when I first started improvising and was the only woman often with a group of men, that sometimes when I would dare to make a really big move and it wasn't, or not even seen, right? Like, and so then the audience would see it. But the people on stage wouldn't see it. And I would be in such an awkward position of like, okay, the audience is all looking at me, but nobody on stage is playing with me. And then someone would do something to take it from there and pull the focus back to them. And then I would be left with thinking that I had made a bad move. And associating a really negative, terrifying feeling with pulling focus. So if you make a big move to take focus and then you're left out on the limb all by yourself, it's very discouraging from doing that again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's also that, and I feel like I've seen this still to this day. I was actually having a conversation about this within the last week about then it becomes even some women, and this applies to any sort of marginalized culture, right? Like if you are in a group where the only thing that's being rewarded is cis white man bro shit, then you're gonna try to play into that. And then it becomes a matter of like everybody's playing into this one thing and the people that are playing authentically for themselves are not being rewarded in the room. So they feel like they're bad at improv in the first place. Right. It's still happening now. I know for sure it's still happening now. I was just in a room where it was happening a week ago. So it's I think it's important in terms of like when we say we're playing with other women or we're playing even with other BIPOC folk, like other aware women, other aware BIPOC folk. And that's not to single out the people that are not aware, but it's just a matter of being clear as to what we need.
Yep. Well, and being part of the older generation of women in improv, a lot of my peers are tough as nails and do have that tendency to play in that more aggressive style. And so then back, in the day, it was like, well, then they're succeeding and improvising, but then getting criticized by other women for being like men, right? So then it's like, so it's that what I love about playing with other women is that you can have some who play more big and some who are more supportive, just like playing. I coached a team of two small men who were short and very thin, and they loved playing together because that's the only situation where they could play the principal or the dad or the boss, because otherwise they were always the little kid, the little brother, the lower status person. So I love when we can support each other in exploring. I was just talking about this with Whit about, so All Jane, No Dick, my ensemble started as 3 women, and the more sparkly performer and more experienced, she had come from a theater background. So we'd all done improv for the same amount of time, but she was the more confident performer. She bailed and left the 2 supportive people. And so when we were a trio, it was always like, we would do great scenes when we were with her, but we would struggle in scenes with each other. And her leaving was probably the best thing that could have happened to us, because it forced us to be able to carry that sparkly
hold your own
character
role. And just when you were saying this, it also brought me back to how I started improvising with men after I had this Adam and Eve space for a couple of years. Once I was able to explore what could be, what I'm capable of within this space without the fear of getting swatted down, I became a more confident improviser when improvising with men. And now at this point, graduating from that into being a more confident improviser on stage with other men, to improvising on a screen without being able to listen to applause or looking at audiences' expressions. I'm probably the most confident I've ever been, be it improv or outside. So it's been a matter of really looking at these uncomfortable experiences and asking them, hey, what are you trying to teach me? You are a teacher whose form I don't understand right now, but you are teaching me something. So I'm going to sit with what you're teaching me and figure out how this is going to benefit me. So I think what we need to keep in mind is these are all transitional states. We can't just forever improvise with women and be like, okay, I never want to get out of this space ever. It's good to have that space, but we need to take things out of that and bring our gifts to the world. Otherwise, we're doing everyone a disservice. And I strongly believe in that.
I agree very much. It's funny because I had never on our Facebook done any kind of like campaign to increase the likes for the theater or anything. And a couple years ago, I was like, I'm just going to try to increase these numbers. And so I did a little campaign. We had started live streaming before the pandemic. We started live streaming in 2016 when we got a grant for our all women's comedy festival to install a bunch of equipment. So I was like, hey, we're going to be live streaming shows, did this post, boosted it. And then I was like, it's online. I could boost it to anywhere where people speak English. And so I added India, and like we were getting 1,000 likes like a day from India. And mostly from Bangalore. And I was like, are these robots? Are these real? I was like trying to look at the sites, but it was pretty exciting to realize like we can share all of these things with the whole world when we're online. And a lot of people have resisted online improv in its many forms. And that's, everyone's got to do what moves them. But for me, I think what's been really beautiful about it is the connections that we can make. And now everyone's been forced to kind of get over the hump of figuring out the technology. And so we can do this. We can talk to you today. And it's so awesome.
I think we've also had a lot of time and space now. The being online has taken us to a space where we can talk literally like this. Like instead of performing, we're just having a conversation, like a basic talk show. And we didn't have that really opportunity as much beforehand. And just like, I feel much more confident now after the pandemic, because not only have I practiced improv in a lot of different ways, but I've essentially solidified my voice, and I've had to use my voice in a different way. And now the fuck, I can't go back into a room with the same old stuff. and it shows. It shows. And it's I'm already feeling the post-growing pain of having to get back into a room where I'm like, now I've gone through this whole journey. We're all completely different people, and we have to find the same space. So I don't appreciate the pandemic, but I appreciate the opportunity to have done this kind of work. The podcast, Inside Improv, things like that.
Bala, you said before we started, you were referencing not wanting to go back to the pre-pandemic idea of normal. What for you are the things that you hope will be different forever?
This is going to be edgy. I don't ever want to see a hard curriculum around improv ever again. If someone comes in and tells anyone, and I see anyone telling someone that this is how you improvise, step 1, step 2, step 3, yes, and blah, 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 I will die. And I will take them along with me. I can't do it. I can't do it anymore because I've played with so many people who improvise in so many different ways, and I've realized I've done a lot of decolonization of my own improv, and along with that, this whole curriculum that I got into improv with just combusted spontaneously. So I can't go back to teaching it. I can't go back to watching anyone teach it. I just want people to be free. This entire idea of quality of shows, I've realized was very the metrics used to measure if a show was a good show or a bad quality show was so narrow and was so white. I can't go back to doing that, and I refuse to do it. I will campaign until I die to rethink, for all of us to rethink what we consider a good show or what we consider necessary improv curriculum. I would
What
be
is a
really
good show?
happy.
What is a good show for you? Like, what do you feel when you get off of a stage? What do you feel like makes up a good show?
I just ask myself one question now: has there been transformation? That's it. If I've been transformed through the course of the show, I'm 100% sure the audience has been as well, because we're all human beings and we relate to each other, whether we like it or not. And that's it. That's all that matters. And even if the transformation is negative, if I come out feeling shitty from a show, I now have the space and the wisdom to be like, hey, what did I learn from that?
Okay, well, I'm really glad I asked that question.
Me too. That was, I just had this conversation with a non-comedy, non-improv person, and they're asking me mostly about stand-up, but the stories that I tell from stand-up are usually about the worst shows. And I had a friend who was kind of, he was learning improv while I was learning stand-up, so we were guiding each other through each of the things. And I hosted my first open mic, and it looks much easier than it is. It's really hard. Everyone's coming in, talking to you. You're trying to listen, think about what you're going to say in between, keep the energy up. And I was doing a terrible job. It was just awful. It was just an awful day. And my friend was doing tech, and we had this little attic kind of pull down ladder, and I climbed up to the thing, and he came over and leaned over, and I was like, this is going terribly. And he goes, I know, isn't it awesome?
Nice.
And he would always say that he loves the bad shows, because the bad shows are where every minute feels like an hour and you remember every second. But a good show, you just remember feeling it was a good show. But it's almost the trauma of a bad show where you have to what happened here? And your brain runs over to keep you from ever feeling that way again. So Fawad has some questions that I think are super interesting about film versus theater in India. So in Western Europe, we see a lot of the traditional theater there in infiltrating the improv style and approach. Yeah. And I know much more about Indian film than I do about the theater traditions there. Can you tell us a little bit about theater now? What is theater like in Bangalore and in India right now?
So in Bangalore, and I can only speak for the urban parts of India, because my knowledge about traditional theater, grassroots theater is quite limited. But Bangalore does have a very rich theater culture. In fact, I think Bangalore is is at the forefront of theater. I would say Mumbai as well. But most of this is scripted theater. Improv is still very new and still in this box of just being improv comedy. So we aren't taken as seriously as the proscenium / scripted theater folks. The pipeline from theater to movie is not as strong as I've seen in the US, where you have all of these schools that are teaching you how to do improv and sketch comedy with the expectation that you will end up on an SNL or something, or a show, or you write for one of these Tonight shows. That is not as strong in India. Yeah, a lot of the theater folks are fine with just with being theater people and doing theater for the rest of their lives, and that's immensely fulfilling for them. It's theater is not a stepping stone into film, at least from what I've seen. But I will say that there are a lot of people who have been able to get film opportunities through improv and through theater, and I know of a few people like that.
And, in the US, I'd say that traditional scripted theater is really suffering. Audiences are not coming out. They'd rather watch Netflix. And I think improv is booming because we are inclusive, right? It gives you an experience that, inclusive of the audience, right? We give an experience that you don't get when you're home. There's no fourth wall. Is the theater, like the scripted theater world, thriving or suffering, do you know, in India, or at least in Bangalore?
So Bangalore, scripted theater is doing quite well in Bangalore, as far as I've seen. And I know that I'm saying this as an improviser who doesn't get their fair due in I'm trying to phrase this without shitting on myself, but I mean, I'm going to have to. But
I can't wait.
The fact of the matter is, like I said, as improvisers, even the scripted theater folks kind of look down on us. They use improv as a tool for scripted theater. So for them, improv is again a stepping stone to something more, what's the word? More divine, more better.
Yeah, more divine is a beautiful way to express it.
Yeah, closer to God.
Yes.
We're playing. Get off my horse, but
yeah, I mean, and being in Portland, it's very different than doing improv in New York or LA or Chicago, and people have jobs and have families, and most people there's a group of people who will come up and might move to a bigger city to pursue their dreams, but mostly it's its own community of people who just love to do that and love to connect. So but only over the last few years has improv, I think, had a little more recognition as its own art form.
Yeah.
So here's another question. Given India's diversity of ethnic and religious groups, how does the diversity play out in the improv scene? Have there been any interesting incidents in India among different groups?
So I would like to say that we've done a good job so far in our jams, especially with people who are trying improv out for the first time. That's like fertile ground for stuff to go sideways, right? Because you can't even blame them and say, hey, you should have known better. You're a person who's been doing improv for so long. Incidents that have come up have to do with a lot of sexism. Like people get on stage and make comments that they've seen work before, has gotten laughs from other people. Fair bit of transphobic stuff, homophobia, things like that. On the religion and the ethnic front, I think even because we play in an urban area like Bangalore, I think people are conscious enough and educated enough not to say things that are obviously taboo. But yeah, when it comes to sexism, which is which has been normalized in Indian culture to a large extent, when they say things that are sexist, they just say that as things that they've heard. And even homophobic and transphobic things has been it's been pretty mainstream. It has been the comic relief in a lot of Bollywood movies for a long time. So when they bring that on stage, it doesn't lead to tensions on stage, but after the show we're like, hey, that was not cool because these reasons, and we don't want to scare you, but we just want to like shift your awareness to the fact that this wasn't okay for these reasons. Yeah,
I think that's, for me, the big transformation, just to get back to the what can be different now moving forward, that I don't want to go back, is the ability to have that conversation without feeling like you're the troublemaker, you're the negative person, like to be able to, because, you know, when I was coming up, you just didn't talk about it. You just tried to prove yourself. You know, Susan Messing and among other people call it, we were the suck it up generation, right? You suck it up and then you try to just be undeniable, right? That's your only route, is to be so good that you can say whatever you want. But now I feel like, you know, I had an interview for an artist in residence, you know, that is a Black trans person, and that was part of the conversation, was like, this is my experience right now. This is what's coming up for me this year. And I think that would have been something people would have kept to themselves and tried to play down and, you know, be like, this is outside of my work, right? Instead of, this is part of who I am, and there's got to be space for this, or fuck off. Like, that's what's exciting to me, is if someone's not even willing to listen or become aware or change their behavior, then I think way more people are like, you have now shown me you're not somebody I want to even be around.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
And just speaking to that, being as a woman, I've felt this, the urge to be part of the suck it up generation, because I didn't want to be further labeled as an emotional woman, or, you know, someone who's just too sensitive to improvise. And now the big paradox is I'm now more confident to talk about my feelings than ever before. Like I'm okay with being too sensitive or being called as someone who has a problem with everything. How are we going to change if we don't call shit out?
No, and that's, you know, Katie Behrens, who's just one of my best friends in all the world and has been part of Curious since the very first training center, 6 months in. She's probably done more shows at Curious than I have, because I took some time off. She used to be in the green room, and somebody would be making an insensitive kind of joke, and she'd just go, "Yeah, I don't like that." And I always loved it. She'd be like, "Yeah, I don't like that." And like, it was shocking. And for a while, even though I had her back and it had no consequences in terms of her relationship with the theater, it definitely, some groups, right, subgroups would make, and people wouldn't invite her to be in those groups because she's setting boundaries. Like, healthy boundaries it's just so important.
Yep.
So
if she didn't get invited, that's the point of a boundary, to keep shit out. So that means that she did a good job keeping her own shit out.
I guess so. It's true.
I just wanted to flag what you said, Bala, about in Bangalore, there's this great diversity, both of ethnicity and religion. And like, so part of the breath of fresh air is in interacting with you and doing not therapies with you, is just getting, like, taking a step out of the Judeo-Christian, Abrahamic existence of North America, and then opening up to this sort of more Eastern traditions, Eastern ideas. And then it's the same fucking thing. It's just misogyny. And what you said was, everybody's really sensitive about religion and really not stepping on each other's toes in religion. Yet what people go to is misogyny and homophobia and transphobia. And so, you know, this country the States identifies as 2/3, you know, believers of some Judeo-Christian, you know, Abrahamic religion. And it's, you know, my curiosity is like, how if in all of these religions, what's built into it is this misogyny and, you know, this masculine lens on everything. How do we make progress when in organized religion that just continues to exist? Oh, Elise just did a trick.
There you go.
Oh, that happened.
Good thing it wasn't during a big question.
Yeah, I was like, Joe,
No,
what is
it's
your
like
question?
I'm on my phone now, if anyone can't tell, and I just started getting a call naturally.
Oh, that's what it was. That's hilarious. So what was
And
your
so I guess,
question,
like,
Joe?
Yeah. So the question is, like, how can we not question religion? How can we not question the ethos of different religious sex divisions, organizations, like in the world, if we really want to see change in misogyny, homophobia, acceptance of each other? And this is just shout out to my daughter Angie, who said when she was 10, "Daddy, I don't know if I want to be religious." Why not, Ange? Because no religions were started by women, were they?
There you go.
Oh, what?
Yep. Yeah.
That's a badass.
That's
That's
a
a
good
badass
girl.
daughter.
Yeah,
It is.
Yeah, there you go.
Have you read things?
Ecofeminism is the answer. Paganism is the
Yeah,
answer.
it
I would
is.
say, for the Western
And
world,
Wiccan,
yes.
right? Now we're back why
Wiccan,
women
yes.
are doing woo-woo witchy things, because
Yes.
it's the
And if that's what we feel like doing, it's what we're gonna do.
Have you read Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, the African author who was educated in Europe, but he's, I think, from Ghana, and it's about how colonization was welcomed by some people because of the misogyny in the traditional religion in Africa at the time. And the women were, it was not only sexist, but like, some pretty traumatic things, like twins were considered evil. So the women would have to walk their twins to the woods and leave them there and listen to their cries until they stopped. As just one example of the misogyny. So then when the colonists came, they saw it at least as a better alternative to what they had experienced in their own religion, though it has, obviously, it's Western religion has its own misogyny built in, but at least it wasn't, what they knew, and it was offering them a better life.
Yeah. This goes back to something my dad always says, which is the known devil is better than an unknown angel. And this is what like a lot of Indian parents use to make sure we toe the line and not fuck shit up in terms of following Indian traditions. And what is interesting, Stacey, in what you said about colonizers being welcomed, we had a sect of Indians who did not want the colonizers to leave. And this was the upper caste people who benefited from, they got jobs, they got access to higher education. And then we had, people who were struggling because they were of a lower caste. The upper caste people would make sure that they were able to stand on the backs of these lower caste Dalit folk and get ahead in life. And that's, I think, a big reason why the British stayed in India for as long as they did, because they had internal support. So yeah, I definitely see a parallel in themes there.
Interesting. It's not like in the Marvel movies when the people are gone for the blink and then they want to make it. There's some people who preferred it before the people came back. It's not like that at all. But anyway, I think this has been great. Joe, Elise, do you have any more questions? Because the time has been flying by. I didn't even realize we've already been talking for over an hour. Anyone have any other questions? Anything you want to share, Bala?
I feel like I do, but I can't. It does not. Oh, yeah, Joe, you have something? I'll have something for sure by the time we're done.
I'll buy you some time with like a 30-second point. So there is a, and I'll try to put this specific podcast underneath. So this is a podcast where sort of atheism meets neuroscience. And it's been, the neuroscience of babies are they're born into the world knowing there's a higher power that's brought them to delivery. And that higher power in their mind when they're born is God, and God is mother. And that's just coded into their brain. They know that someone's there to then extend the warmth and comfort that they had and the nourishment that their body received through being born. And so to me, it seems like religion and misogyny is the most horrible overcompensation for an inferiority complex. could ever be created. Elise, your thoughts?
They don't have to
I
be
will put
in
that
response
podcast
to
up.
that. Did you have any other
Yeah.
questions, Elise?
There's a reason why I'm not good at rhyming, and it's because I can't pay attention to what I'm doing in this very moment and think ahead. So no, I don't have anything because I was paying attention to you.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's also part of being a woman.
It is.
Yeah.
Like that.
Very cool. Yes.
I love it.
Well,
I got nothing. I will say, here's what I will say. I'll give a reflection instead. I greatly appreciate how you are feeling more confident now, and how you feel like, this is what I've received. I may not be, I don't want to speak for you, but I appreciate that I'm hearing that you are feeling right now ready to say whatever it is that you find wrong, because I didn't realize that no matter how much I literally have these conversations daily. Sometimes I have them publicly like this, and sometimes I have them privately. And it's making me recognize how much I still need to hear that other people are doing the same thing, and how often I'm still not hearing that people are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So, so I really appreciate this whole conversation, because it's a good validation, a reminder to keep doing that.
Keep doing that. Yes, most definitely. I think if there's one thing that we as improvisers are, what is our divine purpose? If we are always playing on the stage of the sacred theater, is that we're always going to tell the truth, and whenever someone else is denying someone else's truth, we say, "Hey, I don't like that."
Katie Behrens for the win. Bala, you are so amazing. And just before we go, I'll say not only thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us, and how much it's been a pleasure, but that I hope that you will know that you have people, more and more people growing all over the world. Like, I'm here if you ever need to share some of your experiences as you're fighting the good fight for joy as you go. So thank you so much, Bala. Thank you, Joe and Elise, for being here. Hope to talk again soon. Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching.